UFC Macau this Saturday, headlined by Petr Yan versus Deiveson Figueiredo, which a few years ago would be determined a super fight in the UFC as they were both champions looking dominant. But now they're top-ranked bantamweights in the same weight class, and in my opinion, could be one of the best fights of the entire year. So the main card is starting at 6 a.m. Eastern, the prelims 3 a.m. Eastern, which means most people are not going to be watching this live from America, I'm guessing, unless you are a true diehard fan. Like, this is the card that tests who's an actual hardcore fan here, who's willing to stay up and watch this card. And not only that, it's a whole fight card filled with amazing prospects. Like, this is the card to see some of the best rising talent in the UFC, from Carlos Ulberg, who might be a title challenger later in his career, to Mingyang Zhang, another potential ranked fighter in the light heavyweight division, Zhao Confang, a great talent in the strawweight division, Jose Ochoa, great flyweight fighter, and Lonnie Kavanaugh, who in my opinion is one of, if not the best prospects in MMA right now. So a card filled with amazing rising talents, headlined by two of the best fighters in the world, right outside the top 15 pound for pound in my opinion. I think Deiveson and Yan are very much slept on in terms of how good these two actually are compared to the rest of the roster. But I would say that the prospect of the night is Lonnie Kavanaugh. If it wasn't for him, I'd probably say it would be maybe Carlos Ulberg. Well, he is ranked, but top 15 light heavyweight doesn't really make sense. You know, it's like the talent in that division isn't great. So when you look at top 15, it can kind of tell you a different story. When you're looking at, maybe the featherweight division, top 15 means a lot more there. But I guess, yeah, Lonnie Kavanaugh, prospect of the card. The stake of the card, the fighter that needs a win more than any other, is Carlos Fernandes. He's 1-3 in his last 4 fights. Although a very good fighter, he got thrown to the wolves in his last 2, fighting Raid Tsuruya and Tatsuro Taira. And his next fight isn't easy either, going up against Neandergal Tumendembarel, who also is undefeated. Man, the way they're matching up Carlos Fernandes, like they want him out of there, which is a shame because he is a decent fighter. But the fighter of the night are the two fighters in the main event. Petr Yan, Deiveson Figueiredo, both are like 1 or 2 wins away from a title shot, and are by far the biggest stars of the entire card. The banger of the night, the most explosive fight on the card is, of course, Volkan Oezdemir versus Carlos Ulberg. Two powerful fighters, exciting to watch, most likely going to be a finish. And then the fight of the night is the main event. Petr Yan versus Deiveson Figueiredo, by far the most skilled fight on the card. Two highly technical fighters with very exciting styles. And with that, let's go right to the first fight between the Chinese Mahashate and the Brazilian Nicolas Mata. I'm going to go with Mahashate. He's tall, fights well off the jab, has a strong right straight counter, like how he KO'd Steve Garcia, who's an amazing fighter. Basic footwork for a tall fighter, but enough to keep his range on someone like Nicolas Mata, who is shorter with explosive hooks and kicks, landed big body kicks against the taller Tom Nolan, so he has the experience going up against much taller opponents. But Tom Nolan wasn't as good of a striker as Mahashate is, right? Mahashate doesn't walk into shots the way Nolan did, and he uses his reach much better. So I think Mahashate is going to win this fight, maybe by a decision. Keeping his range, landing jabs, good backstep counters, as Nicolas Mata is going to be exploding for his hooks and maybe even attempting a few takedowns to cover the distance, disengaging with big shots too. Should be a good fight, but I'm going to go with Mahashate. Then with the Long Zhao versus Chong Li. Long Zhao is from China, Chong Li is from Vietnam, and I'm going to go with Chong Li, who is the slight underdog, but I think it should be a close fight. Long has a pressure striking to overwhelm Li, but Li has the power and precision to hurt Long. Long Zhao is a decent-sized bantamweight with a long reach. He's a scrapper, but doesn't have much knockout power. His punches are labored, which is why he lands so much, but rarely gets knockdowns or knockouts. He's like a jack of all trades in the striking. He can do everything in the stand-up, from aggressive punching combos to counter punches to various techniques of kicks to knees in the clinch, but nothing about his striking is truly high level, right? You don't see something similar to like Petr Yan when you watch Long Zhao or something, you know? Chong Li is 2 inches shorter, but has the same reach. Li is a patient, precise striker with more power, good Muay Thai skills. His kicks are strong from both legs, sharp right straight, and powerful left hook. He has good submissions as well. He's by far the more dangerous when it comes to single shots. Long Zhao can overwhelm Li with a lot of volume, and he's also very tough too, so should be a close fight, but I'm gonna go Chong Li. Then we go to one of the best prospects in MMA, Lonnie Kavanaugh from the UK, fighting also undefeated Jose Ochoa, who's from Peru. If it wasn't for the main event being so good, this would be the best fight on the card. Kavanaugh and Ochoa are going to be ranked fighters in the future. I think both these guys are really good, but I'm gonna go with Kavanagh by decision. Loney Kavanagh can do it all at a high level. Fast and technical striking with knockout ability. Footwork is fast, counterpunches are sharp, kicks damage the opponent early, and he's only getting better with every fight. Jose Ochoa is big for the weight class and has excellent striking, very good counters, and sharp sniping ability. But the biggest difference is that Kavanagh and Ochoa fight at different tempos. Kavanagh is usually doing everything fast, whereas Ochoa likes to reset and slow the action after some exchanges. Kavanagh will keep the same pace without changing the tempo in every exchange, and the fast pace and knockout threat quickly overwhelms his opponents. And that's why I think Kavanagh's speed is going to be the biggest difference, but he could run into some of the counter shots from Ochoa, so should be a good fight, but I think Loney Kavanagh is going to be too technical and too fast for Jose Ochoa. Then we go to the stake of the night, Carlos Hernandez versus Niam Dragal to Mendembarel. Carlos Hernandez is from the United States and Niam is from Mongolia, and I'm going with Niam. Carlos Hernandez is a tough, tireless, well-rounded fighter and more dangerous on the ground than he is in the stand-up, but he likes to strike with his opponents a lot. He throws a lot of different techniques like spinning back fists, roundhouse kicks, punching combinations, but he doesn't have much power and his head movement is lacking in moments. But he has decent footwork though, at least. You know, he can get away from a lot of shots using that footwork, but Niam is incredibly long and he's much more powerful with his strikes and more dangerous on the ground. I think his wrestling is going to be the biggest skill difference though. He has decent wrestling to offset Hernandez if he isn't already bludgeoning him with his punching power and volume. He's not the most technical striker, but the power difference between them two and how much he will throw to drop his opponent can break most fighters' chins. So I'm going to go with Niam Dragal, and maybe he wins by a late TKO. Tatsuro Taira is able to drop him and finish him on the ground with ground and pound. So not to say that Niam Dragal is a better striker than Tatsuro Taira, but he hits really hard, man. So I'm going Niam Dragal by a third round TKO. Then we go to the first women fight, Zhao Kan Fang versus Ming Shi. I'm going to go with Fang by a decision. She's much bigger and overall a better striker. Sharp left hands from southpaw and good submissions if Ming takes her to the ground. It says that Ming Shi is a doctor of some kind, might be multitasking with her professions or interests, whereas Fang is completely focused on MMA. And Ming is a decent striker with decent wrestling, but I think she's too small and lacking the strength and power Fang has. So I'm going to go Zhao Kan Fang by a decision. And I think she is going to be maybe one of the better strawweights in the future. She is only 22 years old, and it just looks like that strawweight weight class is going to be dominated by the Chinese female fighters. Zhang Weili is the champ. Xiaonan is one of the top contenders. I think Fang is going to be a top contender in the future. Then we go to one of the better UK flyweights, Kiro Sahota versus one of the better South Korean flyweights, Dong Hoon Choi. Not mistaken with Dong Hoon Choi, but I'm going to go with Kiro Sahota. I think his height and reach is going to be a big factor in him winning. He's 5'10" at flyweight. Very skinny, very thin. I think Choi is going to be the stronger of the two, but Choi doesn't have good defense against straight rights. You saw that in his last fight against Angad Bisht, who was landing powerful right straights on him throughout the fight, and Choi kept trying to just move away from it. And when you're moving back in straight lines against a much longer opponent, that straight right is going to keep landing. Choi needs to get this fight to the ground. He needs to kick the legs, as I don't know if he has the footwork to make his way into close boxing range and land the right hook on Kiro Sahota. That's one of his best punches, but Sahota's very good at using his reach. So I'm going to go Sahota by a decision. Then we go to the number 2 bantamweight out of South Korea, Soo Young Yu, fighting the Chinese Belgian Genesuli. I'm going to go with Soo Young Yu. Both guys are good grapplers. Genesuli is much taller. He relies on his reach, landing jabs and straights from distance, but when opponents get close, his defense is noticeably lacking. And I think Soo Young Yu, who has better fundamental skills in the stand-up, explode on the inside, landing big hooks, get a takedown, where the ground exchanges would be very interesting. But Soo Young Yu has had a few fights in Naza FC, which is located in Kazakhstan, go up against some of those Sambo fighters, which I think is really good experience in the grappling for both wrestling and his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu skills against Genesuli. So I'm going to go Soo Young Yu by a decision. And enough of the flyweights. We're going to the light heavyweight division between the number 1 light heavyweight from California, Ozzy Diaz from the United States, go up against Mingyang Zhang from China. And as you would expect, both fighters are knockout artists. Mingyang Zhang does not have a single decision win. In fact, he's only lost once by decision, so he's either finishing everybody that he beats or getting finished whenever he loses. But he's on a 10-win streak, so we have not seen him lose in a very long time, ever since 2019. As for Ozzy Diaz, same thing. He's never gone to a decision, but for him, both wins and losses have all been finishes. And he used to be a middleweight. He in fact fought Joe Pyfer in the Contender Series, got TKO'd in the second round. I'm gonna go with Mingyang Zhang. I think he's more well-rounded. I think he can take a fight to the ground. ground. We see him take opponents to the ground with body locks. He has crazy punching power. The only thing is, his defense isn't the best, and Ozzy Diaz can land a lot of jabs and straights on him. Those are the main punches that he lands on opponents. He'll also throw flying knees and stuff, but he's going to be the slower fighter out of the two. I think Zhang has a speed advantage. I think he hits harder. He has the takedowns. He has the submissions on top. Very heavy ground and pound. And Ozzy Diaz used to be a middleweight, whereas Mingyang Zhang used to be a heavyweight. So there's going to be a contrast in strength and or power between the two. Mingyang Zhang seems to be too big to be a middleweight, and Ozzy Diaz put on some muscle and fat to go up to the light heavyweight division. So I'm going to go with Mingyang Zhang here by a TKO due to ground and pound. And then we go to the main card. Volkan Oezdemir versus Carlos Ulberg. I'm going with Ulberg. He's the better striker. Technically, he's faster. I think he hits harder. Volkan, I would say, is more well-rounded. He could take the fight to the ground, as we've seen him do against Bogdan Gushkov. He has good fundamentals in the stand-up, but he's lacking some of the more advanced techniques that Carlos Ulberg has. Ulberg's check left hook is one of the best in the UFC. He has amazing footwork. He's going to be the bigger fighter, longer, faster, more athletic, and developing his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to the point where he can even submit fighters now, shown against Da Woon Jung. But I don't think Volkan is going to make the mistake of rushing him the way Alonzo Menafield did, which was like one of the most questionable fight IQ moments in UFC history. The only thing Alonzo Menafield should not have done was rush him, and he did it like immediately when the fight started. He rushed him down and got knocked out for it. You cannot rush Carlos Ulberg because his counter punches are way too sharp. I think Volkan's going to try to slow the fight down, kick at the legs, try to land a couple jabs, and try to get into clinching moments where he could take the fight to the ground, or just slow the action altogether. The only thing is, it's going to require him to be at distance a lot of times, right? It's going to require him to try to find the leg kicks from distance and the jab to get in, and while he's in that range, Ulberg is going to be picking him apart with his own leg kicks, with the body kicks, the front kicks to the face, the front kicks to the body, the jabs, the check left hooks, combinations from distance. I think it's a very good fight for Carlos Ulberg, and I think he's going to win by a third round TKO. And then we go to Cong Wang versus Gabriella Fernandes. Absolutely going with Cong Wang from China. Absolutely going with Cong Wang. Wang's kickboxing is absolutely high level. She defeated Valentina Shevchenko in kickboxing, where Shevchenko resorted to clinching the whole fight. Wang just hits very hard, man. And Gabriella Fernandes is not great. This is a mismatch, in my opinion. I think Wang is one of the best flyweights in the UFC. Even though she only made her UFC debut, her striking skills are just on another level, and has a pretty good ground game as well. Fernandes is big, she's stocky, full of muscle, but very slow, not technical in the stand-up, and I think Wang TKOs her in the second round. Then we go to Kenan versus Muslim Salikhov. I'm going to go with Muslim Salikhov. I think Kenan will play Salikhov's game, stand in front of him in moments, go blow for blow, trying to land the counter punch, as Salikhov is a little bit more technical in the stand-up, in my opinion. He has a very good jab, hits much harder, more dynamic with his kicks, and has a powerful right hand. He could rock Kenan with that punch. The only thing about Salikhov is he's 40 years old, and you saw that in the Randy Brown fight, man. He wasn't as fast. There was a clear difference in speed. Now, I don't think Kenan is the fastest fighter in the world. He's not as fast as Randy Brown is, but he could have a speed advantage against Salikhov. The only thing is, Salikhov, I think, has the skill advantage, right? He's a little bit more technical than Kenan, who's fundamental with everything he does, right? He's not exceptional anywhere. He has a good left hook that you saw against Ian Gary. He puts together combinations well. Everything's like fundamentally sound with Kenan. But I think Salikhov has a little bit more on top of that. So I'm going with Muslim Salikhov by a third round TKO. And then we go to the co-main event against ranked strawweights, Xiaonan, who's number 3, versus Tabatha Ricci, who's number 8. I think Xiaonan is going to win the fight. Even though she's been losing the majority of her fights in the last few years, I think she's only getting better. She's 2-3 since 2021, losing to Carla Esparza, Marina Rodriguez. She beat Mackenzie Dern, beat Jessica Andrade, and lost to Zhang Weili. She got way better when she went up against Andrade, and then got even better after that against Zhang Weili. Nobody thought she was going to put up that much of a fight against Weili. She has good fundamental striking, a decent ground game, seemingly just hits harder than ever before, sitting a lot more on her punches, has an excellent jab, very good lead kick that can disrupt the balance of Tabatha Ricci. Tabatha has good judo. She's going to try to find her way into the clinch, and those lead kicks can take away a bit of that balance for clinch entries for Tabatha Ricci. I think as long as the fight is staying striking without any clinching, I think Yang Xiaonan is going to be winning the fight. Tabatha Ricci needs to get the fight to the ground, but with her kind of takedown techniques, it's going to be rather difficult, right? She's not like a Carla Esparza who has that good of double legs and single legs to grab onto the kick and take her to the ground. But we'll see. Maybe Ricci has made those adjustments in her game, but I'm going to go with Yang Xiaonan by a decision. I don't think it's going to be like a domination or one side or anything like that. I think it's going to be a competitive fight, but Xiaonan obviously winning the rounds. And then we go to the big main event, one of the best fight night main events of the entire year. Former bantamweight champion, top contender Petr Yan going up against former flyweight champion, top contender Deiveson Figueiredo. Man, I think a lot of people are writing off Deiveson. Ever since he came up to bantamweight, it seems like a lot of people just did not have a lot of confidence in him, and I don't understand why. He was always a very big flyweight, always. I never thought he would be weak. I didn't think he'd be too small. I didn't think he'd be not powerful enough. I think him moving up a weight class is also going to carry that power with him. But the thing about Deiveson Figueiredo is that his grappling has become much more impactful in his fights, where he can still hurt anybody with his punches. They have to also worry about the takedowns, ground and pound, and submissions, unlike ever before. In the flyweight division, they were fast enough to scramble with him, but he has a speed advantage against most of his opponents where he can out-scramble them in the bantamweight division. Now, is that true with Petr Yan? Well, Yan has good takedown defense, generally, when he's not fighting guys like Merab and Aljo, right? I don't think Figueiredo is as good of a wrestler as Aljamain and Merab are. But at the same time, I can see him getting takedowns on Yan as well. I see Yan defending a few of them, but also getting taken down by a few of them. And he should have the advantage in the striking if Deiveson is starting quickly, which I don't think he will. I don't think Deiveson is going to go right after Yan and try to overwhelm him from the beginning because he doesn't have that kind of cardio the way that Merab does, right? Deiveson also has to pace himself in fights, especially 5-rounders, because he is so explosive. When you're that fast twitch, it's hard to carry that explosiveness for 5 rounds. But Deiveson is a sniper with that right hand. Yan likes to cover up, right? He likes to pick up his hands, guard his head, heavy defense. But if Deiveson could find the shots through the guard, he could rack up on points throughout that fight. But also, that punching power threat, getting Yan to cover up like that can also open up takedowns for himself, because when a fighter is covering up like that, they're usually vulnerable for takedowns, as Yan likes to throw counter hooks out of that guard, and he will sometimes take his eyes off of his opponent, leaving Deiveson for multiple options for an attack. Right straight through the center, hooks around the guard, body punches, which he's really good at. He has a strong left hook to the body, good leg kicks, or can go for the takedown. But I do think Yan is fundamentally and overall a more technical striker than Deiveson Figueiredo. I think Deiveson's defense fails him in moments where he will punch and then back away with his hands down, and Yan has an excellent counter hook where he blocks the punch and then counters immediately with his hooks. And if Deiveson is not pulling away with his hands up, he can get rocked by those punches. Not only that, the follow-up shots with the switching combinations, landing shots from different angles, are other ways that Yan can land on Deiveson as well. But Deiveson is going to have a fast takedown if Yan is aggressive with his striking like that. But does Yan want to take Deiveson to the ground? That's an interesting part of this fight, because he is the bigger fighter in there. It says he weighs 150 pounds, but that's in the cage, right? That's on fight night. Deiveson is walking around 165 pounds before camp. Well, actually, wasn't Deiveson's cage weight somewhere in the 140s? Yeah, he was 143.2 pounds when he fought Brendan Moreno in the cage. And remember, during that time, he also dropped his weight before camp, so he can make the weight easier. At bantamweight, he doesn't need to do that. Bantamweight, he could fill up, be normal, and then just cut weight normally. Maybe he's around the same weight as Petr Yan, but I think Yan is the bigger fighter in there. I think he has a bigger frame. He's used to fighting at bantamweight. He carries that strength with him. He's also like 2 inches taller. Deiveson, though, has a lot of muscle. He's very wide. I don't think Yan is going to be that much stronger than Deiveson, and I don't think he's more powerful, punch for punch. Deiveson has different kind of power. He's pound for pound one of the hardest punchers ever in the UFC. There's no way a flyweight / bantamweight should be hitting as hard as this guy does. I mean, Deiveson dropped Marlon Vera, the only fighter to ever do it. Remember the knee that Sean O'Malley landed on Marlon? That couldn't even drop him. But all it took was a right hand from Deiveson, and he also dropped Pantoja, who has one of the best chins in the UFC. 2 fighters with granite chins, and Deiveson dropped both of them. The only thing about Deiveson is he uses his head movement and footwork to get away from punches. He doesn't block as much. Petr Yan does the opposite. He blocks more than anything else. More than head movement, more than footwork. It makes this fight very, very close, but I'm picking the big underdog here, Deiveson Figueiredo. He is a ridiculously sized underdog. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Even if you think Yan is going to win, which he can, right? This is a fight that's nearly 50-50. Like, this is truly one of the hardest fights to call this year. But they have Deiveson as a 2.5 to 1 underdog. It's insane. He's like a plus 250. Now, that's not the reason why I'm picking Deiveson, but, betting wise, it does not hurt at all to put something on Deiveson. He can absolutely win this fight. And Yan has a difficult time against fighters who mix up the striking and grappling with him. Just like Song Yudong did, just like Merab did, just like Aljo did. Right, Song Yudong wasn't fighting as fast as Merab was, but he was still giving Yan a very difficult fight. I think Deiveson has a better ground game than Song Yudong, and his punches are more precise, while also arguably being more powerful too. Maybe not by much. Song hits very hard, but Deiveson is much better with his straight punches and body hooks than Song Yudong is. Song throws a lot more overhands, which are easier to see with the way that Yan fights. Right, Yan is able to see overhands much easier than straight punches because of the way that he covers up. Those are much better against overhands than straight punches. And the other thing is, Deiveson is much more experienced going 5 rounds than Song Yadong was. So that's why I'm going Deiveson Figueiredo. It's a risky main event pick, but I do think Deiveson can absolutely win this fight. And when we go to the betting odds here, again, Deiveson plus 250, Petr Yan is a minus 320. I think those are very good underdog odds for Deiveson Figueiredo. Normally, I would avoid a fight that's that competitive, but the fact that the odds are so wide apart, it doesn't hurt to put a little bit on Deiveson. I agree with the co-main event, but I don't know. Xiaonan minus 200 is not great. It'd be better if she was like a minus 150 or 170. I would not bet on the Salikhov and Kenan fight. Wang absolutely should win, but she's like a minus 900. Cole's Ulberg should win as well. I would avoid the Ming Yang and Ozzy Diaz fight. Too much power flying out both ways for Zhang to be a minus 340 favorite. I would also not bet on the Su Young Yu fight. Too competitive. Same with the Sahota and Choi fight. I think Fang should absolutely beat Ming, even though she's a very big favorite, minus 400. I think Niamdragal is one of the best underdogs on the card. He's like a plus 150, but I think he should win the fight. I would not bet on the Kavanaugh and Ochoa fight. That's a very competitive fight, but they have Kavanaugh. He's a minus 375. I would not bet on that. Remember, even though Lonnie Kavanaugh has a lot of hype, and he is very, very good, he is still new to the UFC. I would not bet on the Lee and Long fight. Too competitive, and the odds are also very close. And I think Mahashate should win the fight. So those are my predictions, picks, and odds, and all that stuff. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you guys did, make sure to give the video a like, make sure to subscribe with the bell for notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video.